My wife left me just because I cheated on her. Now she's marrying my best friend and I refuse to let that happen. I told her I cheated because I fell out of love, but honestly, I'm not trying to be a jerk, but her face used to be so smooth. Now she has lines that make her look older than she is, and there's this constant frown that makes it look like she's mad all the time. Thankfully, our divorce ended up being a clean process, but when it became official I never heard from her again. Even when I sent her a housewarming gift, I got jack poop in return, not even a text or call. That's when I knew she really had changed, because the woman I married would have sent some sort of thank you text. Then things got pretty rough, mostly because I didn't have anyone to talk to. My best friend lived 2 hours away, and most of the time he is swamped with work. He also goes completely MIA whenever he gets a new girl, and then when things settle down, we all hear from him more. I never really minded, because we've always been the duo who could go months with little to no communication, then hang out like no time had passed. And by this point I had a really busy career, new pregnant wife, and 2 step-kids. So when work sent me to a networking party right in his hometown, I was pretty excited, until all 8 of my calls went unanswered. In hindsight, I should have noticed that his almost year-long silence was well worth questioning. But anyway, the party was definitely a success, and just as I was getting ready to leave, guess who I saw? My best friend. By this point I was pretty tipsy, so I gave him a big hug, and he looked super surprised before weakly hugging me back. I told him I tried calling so we could hang out. That's when he broke the news. I just got back from my honeymoon, so I was trying not to be on my phone. I still didn't see what would come next. I spit out a rush of questions like, who is she? Where is she? What's her name? Where'd you meet her? How long have y'all been together? He looked down at his feet before answering with 2 words, it's Emily. I still remember the feeling in my stomach when I realized he wasn't kidding, and I immediately wanted to unalive myself. Before I could say anything, he told me I didn't get to have an opinion about it, because I had treated her like poop, and ended up choosing a cleaning lady over her. Apparently he didn't do anything wrong, since he asked her out 2 years after the divorce. I spent the rest of the weekend drinking alone, trying to process what I just heard. It was the first time I questioned whether our divorce was the right decision. But ultimately, my ex-wife was older now, and probably even less attractive, so I figured it would be wrong to be with someone that I didn't even like to look at. Regardless, the betrayal hit hard. So when I returned home, I couldn't stop myself from being distant and irritable, which led to me catching my wife going through my phone to see if I was cheating. I finally came clean and told her what happened at the work party. You see, if this was my ex-wife, she would be empathetic and probably give me one of her bear hugs. But my new wife just rolled her eyes, and said this was publicized ages ago on their social media. I stared at her blankly, like, are you effing kidding me right now? And that's when she snapped, I know what you're like, you're just waiting to leave aren't you? You think I don't notice your eyes staring at girls almost half my age? Well that was just too far. I left the kitchen and went into our bedroom to be alone, and the first thing I did was go on Instagram, where I used a fake account to stalk the happy couple. I immediately realized that my ex-wife looked so different. It felt like I was looking at the same face from 15 years ago, her perfect smile with no facial lines or weird frown, and with the same glow too. I cross-examined this with every new photo of her I could find. WhatsApp profile picture, TikTok account, her husband's LinkedIn, but they all told me the same thing. I should have stayed in the marriage and waited for this issue to be fixed. It was at this point that I realized my new wife was right, she had aged, and I didn't want to be with her anymore. Even though I love her, it's not the same way I loved my ex-wife. My wife doesn't love me the same way my ex-wife did either. I told my wife I would stay at a hotel till things cooled off. And for the first time, I started regretting things I did that led to our divorce. Because we were mostly really happy until her skin went to poop. But part of me was also super angry, like why did some other man get to have what I wanted? And even though I knew no one gives a poop about mental health when it comes to men, I was still hurt when my dad and brother told me to just get over it. So in the middle of my heartbreak, I was certain that meeting up with my ex-wife would finally bring me some closure. I sent her an email about how sorry I am for hurting her, how I would rip my heart out and fast for weeks if it helped her heal from the heartbreak and bad memories I caused her. I never received any reply, which made her call even more unexpected. I hate to admit it, but hearing her voice made me cry. My efforts to hide it behind coughs were useless, and that's when she offered to meet up and talk, in a public space. So the next day I drove to a cafe nearby, and had to stop myself from staring when I saw her walk in the door. We talked for a few hours about everything. She's really happy and she's doing well. It made me realize just how lucky I was to have the years I had with her, but I still couldn't understand how she was able to make such a turnaround, with her life, yes, but also her appearance. Eventually I couldn't hold it in anymore, so as the conversation became more lighthearted I said, okay, spill, how do you look even younger than when we separated? She laughed before responding with wow, you haven't changed a bit, have you? Well if you really want to know, it's this. She then pulled a cream out of her bag before saying, it's called Growth Factor, it's a sunscreen. Your best friend actually recommended it to me. The dig hurt, but I guess I deserved it. She then followed up with, your little mistress is like, what 30 now? Yikes, you should probably get her a growth factor too or you might have to cheat again. I figured now was the time to wrap it up, so I wished her the best and drove to my parents' update. I should have seen this coming, but while I was away my wife told me about the possibility of the baby not being mine, and after a test it definitely isn't. She offered to go back to her home state to live with her mom and stepdad, and I told her maybe there she could find someone that will actually stick around, which made me laugh. I didn't think that old Beach would even be able to find someone to cheat on me with in the first place. For some reason, she didn't find this as funny as I did, and she didn't seem to appreciate my recommendation of the Sunray Growth Factor sunscreen either, especially when I told her it could bring her up to par with my ex-wife.